Yeah, I asked Alan if he would do it. Is that all right?
Not really. How are you? Yeah, all your jobs? Oh, how many were there? Oh my goodness, wow. So I unmuted this.
Is this,
So let me mute it again.
I'm just gonna do this.
Go ahead, no, you're gonna start.
Welcome.
Closer, Alan. A little closer.
Welcome to our service from the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence. I'm Alan Dorman, and I'm a member of the Society, an awesome property, and I'm also a youth group advisor. It is wonderful to see you here this morning in the Great Hall and online. Thank you for everyone who is helping make the service happen this morning. If you are new or returning after a time away, we're very glad you're here. Feel free to fill out our blue welcome card, which you can put in the offering plate later in the service. There is also an online version that you'll find through the link in the chat. We'll put you on our email list so you can receive information about our activities. Our music director, Alan Cogan, is away, and Michelle Fishbein is this morning's pianist. Welcome. Michelle is a local musician and teacher who specializes in jazz piano and is also bodywork therapist. We're very glad to welcome her. We strive to be a congregation that welcomes people of all ages, races, religious beliefs, backgrounds, sexual orientations, gender identities, and abilities. We belong to the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, and we are guided and inspired by its values and principles. Our values and principles move us to remember that we in Northampton inhabit unceded land of the Pecumtuck and Nipmuc peoples. They remind us to acknowledge our responsibility to face the legacies of dispossession and systemic racism that are part of our collective history, even as we also affirm and celebrate the legacies that inspire us. We're here to celebrate, to reflect, to support one another in sustaining hope and upholding our values. If you are on Zoom, we ask that you please keep your videos off, except during the greeting. Masking is now optional in our hall, and if you'd like to sit in a section with other people who prefer to mask, the pews behind the piano are reserved for you. And now we'll begin our service.
Creativity is to see suddenly that all bushes burn with a beauty that is almost unbearable. It is to stop arguing about the gods because it has been whispered in your ears. It's all divine. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit for our chalice lighting, and then we'll remain standing to sing, I Know This Rose Will Open. In our gathering, one flame lights hundreds. We will light your path and give you courage, so you will open like a flower. Come with us and sit under the blossoms. Our story this morning is called The Night Gardener, and the authors and illustrators are two brothers named Fan. I don't know what happened to their names anyway. It looks like an old story, but it was actually published in 2016. William looked out of his window. He found a commotion on the street. He quickly dressed, ran downstairs, and raced out the door to discover this wise owl had appeared overnight as if by magic. William spent the whole day staring at it in wonder, and he continued to stare at it until it became too dark to see. That night, he went to bed with a sense of excitement. The following morning, he was not disappointed. Each day, he awoke to discover a new topiary. Next was a friendly rabbit, then a pretty parakeet, then a playful elephant. With each new sculpture, the crowds grew. Something was happening on Grimlock Lane, something good. The next day, William dashed out of his home and followed the crowds, only to find the most magnificent masterpiece yet. Festivities continued long after the sun had set. And as William was about to head home, he spotted someone unfamiliar. Could it be? The gentleman turned to William and he said, "There's so many trees in this park, I could use a little help." It was the night gardener. Under the light of the full moon, they worked deep into the night. William awoke to the sound of happy families walking by and a gift from the night gardener. The whole town had come to admire the night gardeners and William's work. Over time, the leaves changed, and then they fell until there was no evidence that the night gardener had ever been to Grimlock Lane. But the people of the small town were never the same. And neither was William. Now I invite you to rise again in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 38, Morning Has Broken. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of golden garden, strong in completeness, where God's sweet rest. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, all of the one light, Eden's soft play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. And now it's time to greet one another. Greet the 30 or so people on Zoom first. Hello, everyone on Zoom. And then turn and say hello to your neighbor. Hello, everyone on Zoom. There you are. Hi, Lori. Hi, Laura. Hi, Mark. Georgia. Who else is there? Janet Nichols, you can come in. Hi, Amanda. Good to see you. Mary Beth, good to see you. Kat, Gail and John. Laura. Oh, is that, you're having a hard time hearing me? Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Kamala and Lucy, good morning. Hi, Amanda. Other Amanda. Hi, Truman. Amy, good to see you. Who else is there? Melissa, good to see you. Mr. Hayes, good to see you. Rich, Sherry. Wonderful to see you all. Jess Jones, thanks for Zooming this morning. AJ, hello, welcome. Hi, Sally. I hope you're getting a lot of gardening in. Hi, Claire. Steve and Teresa. Other Sally. All right. That was very education activities. Is the volume okay now? Yes, okay. Everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of God surround you We have a very short reading from Shikibu Izumi, who is a 10th century Japanese poet, and she is today still said to be Japan's greatest female poet. Watching the moon at dawn, solitary mid-sky, I knew myself completely. No part left out.
Hello, I'm Janet Clark, a member of the Climate Action Group, and this is the Social Justice Minute, which reminds us that our faith calls us powerfully to action on social justice and the environment. Perhaps we feel dismayed that massive problems like climate change and toxic pollution are too complicated to know what we can actually do. With the climate crisis resulting from burning carbon, we have an urgent need to stop pumping petroleum and natural gas. How can we do this? Similarly, what can we possibly do to build racial and economic justice? We learn about disadvantaged communities that are too often chosen as sites for trash incinerators, refineries, and fossil fuel infrastructure. Danger from toxic spills, explosions, and fire is part of the neighborhood, fouling the air, water, and soil. These areas are zones of high asthma and cancer rates, with air loaded with benzenes and particles of ash from factory stacks. What can we do? How can we even contact these people in need of our strong voice? Well, here, we have an opportunity to join the Springfield Climate Justice Coalition and other justice groups across the state to fight the proposed construction of a redundant gas pipeline, with a rally in Springfield this coming Saturday. Our fine new Governor Healy wants to build this pipeline. Eversource admits Springfield doesn't need more gas, and this pipe would not address system reliability. And the company plan is to charge all state ratepayers an extra 9.67% each year on out, indefinitely, for this construction. So we are asking you to join to save the date, March 20th, at 12:30 to be at Stearns Square in Springfield to rally and then march. Bring lunch or get food from a local restaurant. This is a chance to meet people on the front lines of environmental justice work and to proclaim a strong message to the governor, to put gas in the past.
Our generosity makes everything we do possible, and it helps us support organizations and movements in the greater community. Half the proceeds of what we collect every Sunday support the Society's operating budget, and the other half is shared with organizations outside our walls. You can mail in a check, you can donate online, you can put your contribution in one of the plates that the ushers will pass, and now you can even turn over your order of meeting and look on the back, and there's a QR code which will take you directly. We have, as our treasurer, almost treasurer emeritus, David Nelson said, joined the 21st century. Yay! The offering will now be given and very gratefully received. Our meditation is from the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore. Who are you, reader, reading my poems 100 years hence? I cannot send you one streak of gold, one single flower from this wealth of spring. Open your doors and look abroad. From your blossoming garden, gather fragrant memories of the vanished flowers of 100 years before. In the joy of your heart, may you feel the living joy that sang one spring morning, sending its glad voice across 100 years. Let's take a moment together in silence. Our theme today is creativity and beauty, and I know some of you who came early know this, but a longtime member of the congregation, Alice Zewers, who died about a month ago, left all of her artwork to the society, and it's in the parlor. And if anyone would would like to take something, either to remember Alice or just because it strikes your fancy and you would like it, please, please, please take the opportunity after the service to go in the parlor, and if there's something you like, take it home and enjoy it. Our reading is from Lauren Isley, who was an anthropologist, a paleontologist, a poet, a nature science writer, an educator. He was the Benjamin Franklin Professor of Anthropology and History of Science at the University of Pennsylvania at the time of his death in 1977. And this is an excerpt from an essay he wrote called "How Flowers Changed the World." Once upon a time, there were no flowers at all. A little while ago, about 100 million years ago, as the geologist estimates time in the history of our 4-billion-year-old planet, flowers were not to be found anywhere on the 5 continents. The monotonous green of the pine and spruce forests stretched everywhere. Wherever one might have looked, from the poles to the equator, one would only have seen the cold, dark, monotonous green of a world whose plant life possessed no other color. Somewhere, a short time before the close of the age of reptiles, there occurred a soundless, violent explosion. That explosion lasted millions of years, but it was an explosion nevertheless. It marked the emergence of the angiosperms, the flowering plants. The great evolutionist Charles Darwin called them an abominable mystery because they appeared so suddenly and so fast. Flowers changed the face of the planet. Without them, the world we know, humans themselves, would never have existed. Because along with the flowers came grasslands, and the seeds, taken incidentally by animals as they fed on grass, were and are highly nutritious. And as time passed, great herbivores like the mammoths, horsons, bisons appeared. On the edge of the forest, a strong, old-fashioned animal still hesitated. Its body was that of a tree dweller. If it had any idea of competing in the new world, it had better forget it. Nature had not done well by this creature. It didn't have hooves, it couldn't run fast, it didn't have strong teeth. But perhaps as a consequence, it had a malicious gleam in its eye. The gleam of an outcast who has been left nothing and knows it is going to have to take what it gets. One day, a little band of these odd apes shambled out upon the grass, and the human story had begun. Our next hymn is "I Am That Great and Fiery Force" number 27, which I don't think I have ever sung in this sanctuary. So if I haven't sung it, probably a lot of you haven't, at least for a very long time. The words come from Hildegard of Bingen, who was an 11th century Benedictine abbess. She was a botanist, a composer, a writer, a philosopher, a musician, a medical practitioner, and a mystic. And she was well known in her own time for her many, many gifts. So Michelle will play it through for us once, and then please rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 27, "I'm That Great and Fiery Force." don't know why we've never sung that. I think it's pretty. What is it? That great and fiery force that Hildegard sensed and wrote about. Could it be at least partially a creative imperative? Could it be creativity itself? What if creativity is the fabric, the weaving and the weaver, the great and fiery force of all that is, of the universe itself? That those may not be questions you ask yourselves on a regular basis. And for some of you, some of us, they may not even make any sense. So what is creativity? It's definitely more than inspiration that arises out of nowhere. Creativity has to be a process that involves combining and synthesizing experiences, ideas, prior knowledge, memories, the data from a situation we're facing, all to arrive at a new synthesis, something novel. It's relational, it's iterative, it's experimental. Maybe it takes a little bit of risk. I think it uses what Eastern philosophy calls mind, and Western thought might call insight or inspiration. So let's go back to the story, the magic of the night gardener. A small town is changed during a season when its trees are transformed night by night into sculptures of fabulous creatures. It's a story about art. It's a story about wonder and imagination. It's a story about a lonely little boy and a strange man, about the possibilities of art and imagination to bring all kinds of people together. It's a story about creativity. So where does the gardener's creativity come from? If you think about it, it has to have come from what he has learned. Somewhere in the past, he learned the skill of pruning. He listened to and watched his teachers and mentors. He practiced. He knows tools. He has seen other sculptures, pictures of animals and mythical creatures. He's seen live animals as well. He has a sculptor's eye and a mind that helps him envision shapes, both what is present and what could be present. And all of those experiences, all those inputs, they learn and dance and play in his mind and his eyes and his hands. Some of them he draws unconsciously, some just through muscle memory, some in ways he senses, but doesn't and could not put into words. Open your doors and look abroad. From your blossoming garden, gather fragrant memories of the vanished flowers of 100 years before. Every one of us is creative, and creativity in our own lives works the same way as for the gardener. It's relational, it's iterative, it's a process of combining elements, memories and wisdom from the past, information, knowledge, skill, combining and synthesizing to arrive at something new. I think it takes a certain kind of attention and as well as intention. I also connect creativity to the state of mind that people who meditate regularly can sometimes achieve, or the sense of oneness we might experience under a vast starry sky, or is evoked in that ancient Japanese poem, watching the moon at dawn, solitary mid-sky. I knew myself completely, no part left out. So the visual arts, music, writing, drama, dance, maybe even topiaries, may be what comes to mind when we think of creativity. But much of what we do in the ordinary course of our lives is also alive with creativity, or the potential for it. Even the choices we make and the process we follow in getting dressed in the morning contain possibilities for novelty and for creative invention. This morning I got a box from my younger son of, I don't know, 10 pairs of socks, Bombas socks with all different patterns. So there's creativity. Every morning for the rest of the summer, I get to pick a creative pair of socks. The other one sent me flowers. We are creative as gardeners, basket makers, knitters, quilters, cooks, teachers, members of task forces or committees, members of helping professions, craftspeople of all kinds. We are creative as partners, as friends, and as parents. So today is Mother's Day. If you're a parent or had parents, think about the thousands of things you do or your parents did, decisions made on behalf of your children. I was reminded of the beautiful poem that Arjuna Greist shared with us last week that she titled Infinity, which was a poem that was inspired in part by her child's challenge to list 9 things that are infinite. As parents, we explain, we interpret, we guide, we make decisions about what we want our children to experience and what we try to protect them from. And not all the time, but often what we're doing as parents is a creative act as we draw on experience and what we know and on our child's unique strengths and needs, as we draw on our bonds of love. It's really clear to me that creativity is a fundamental life process. And hence the question, could it be part of the ground of being and a force for good? Does it somehow play into a framework for understanding reality? And is it at work in the universe as a whole? So Lauren Isley, who was writing in the 1970s, reminded us that Darwin called the emergence of flowering plants an abominable mystery because of the speed on a geologic scale with which flowering plants appeared and began to flourish. Well, a lot has happened in evolutionary biology and paleontology in the last 50 years. And very recently, there was a study published where scientists developed a model showing, I'm quoting here, a diverse group of flowering plants had been living for a very long time, shadowed by ferns and gymnosperms, which were dominating ancient ecosystems. They reference mammals, small mammals who were running around under the radar screen and literally under the feet of dinosaurs, and the mammals that had a chance to emerge once the dinosaurs were gone. And we learned from Isley that the grasses came into being, the flowering plants and grasses came into being. So the emergence of flowering plants is perhaps not as much of a mystery as Darwin and Isley may have believed, although it's still very controversial between the molecular biologists and the paleontologists who study plant fossils. They don't agree, and they don't agree with the approach. So does all that strengthen or weaken the argument for the role of creativity? There is a small school of philosophical and religious thinking called process thought that places creativity at its center. And if you're interested in this, I came upon and recommend a website that's called openhorizons.org, which is curated by someone named Jay McDaniel, who is a philosopher on the faculty at Hendrix College in Arkansas or Arizona. He says that process thinkers see the universe as, I'm quoting, an ongoing process of development and change, never quite the same from moment to moment. Every entity in the universe is best understood as a process of becoming. And this is key, a becoming that emerges through its interactions with others. Think of the synthesis, the combining inputs, in the creative act. The becoming is always relational, always taking input from what comes before. And so process thinkers, consistent with their name, assert that the universe is composed of processes, not things. McDaniel also mentions the concept of interconnectedness. The universe as a whole is a seamless web of interconnected events, none of which can be completely separated from the others. And this is true at all levels, at the subatomic level, in the natural world, in our day-to-day living, in the arts. Another idea he mentions is continuous creativity. The universe, he says, exhibits a continuous creativity on the basis of which new events come into existence over time, which didn't exist before. This continuous creativity is the ultimate reality of the universe. Everywhere we look, we see it. This is where the theology comes in. God is an expression of creativity. Even as God creates, God is also continuously created. Some process thinkers, the fundamental founding thought is that there are divine urgings or lures, L-U-R-E-S, that are part of all this continuous creativity, part of the occasions of experience from the atomic level to the level of human decision-making. Something is urging or impelling the process of creativity towards greater beauty, towards synthesis, towards greater understanding, towards complexity. Existence is constantly changing, and in every moment, all that happens is being lured or urged towards greater beauty and complexity. A theologian named Charles Hartshorne, who was one of the first process theologians, argues the general principle of God's purpose is the beauty of the world or the harmonious happiness of creatures. So for most process thinkers, creativity, meaning, and beauty are all related, and they are inextricably part of why the universe exists. The beautiful evolves to enhance the enjoyment of living things so that they will survive and thrive. And there are a handful of physicists who have taken up this way of thinking. A physicist named John Jungermann wrote a book called World in Process, Creativity and Connection in the New Physics back in the 1990s. I think Gary Zukov wrote something that kind of touched on this earlier, if you remember. That was probably back in the 70s. In Jungermann's book, he describes the relevance of process thought, process ideas, to Einstein's general and special laws of relativity, to quantum mechanics, to high energy physics, and cosmology. And he writes that process philosophy is remarkably compatible with what we have learned about matter and about the evolution of the cosmos. It invites us to look for patterns of interdependence and connection. And he goes on to say, with process thought, we have the framework for a new myth appropriate to our age to guide our religious quest. So process thought is actually full of concepts and ideas that are challenging for people who are neither physicists nor philosophers. It's definitely not bedtime reading. and I think I've said this before, but Alfred North Whitehead, who was a brilliant 20th century mathematician and philosopher, was the person who wrote the first and defining text on process thought. And a lot of these ideas are spins on or elaborations on or modifications of Whitehead's ideas. His book was called Process and Reality, and it's so hard to read it. It is so difficult to decipher, and the threads of his arguments are so densely woven that 20 years after his death, someone named Donald Sherburne, who was another philosopher, published a key to Whitehead's work. And what Sherburne did, he rearranged the order of the topics, and he put in explanatory introductions and comments on every section. He literally rewrote Whitehead's book in a slightly more logical order and tried to explain it as he went along. So while I was in seminary, I spent one summer, so I was intrigued by this and I did not understand it. And so I spent part of a summer slogging through Sherburne, Whitehead, Sherburne, Whitehead. And I understood at that time enough to convince myself that there really is something there for me. And process thought is actually a system you can find if you combine and synthesize in our current UU sources. And in some of the values that the Article 2 revisions are suggesting. Process thought, this is two of the sources: direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder, and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life, and a need to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science. Direct experience of mystery and wonder, an openness to the forces which create and uphold life, a need to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science. For me, I want to believe that there are in fact forces that create and uphold life, that the universe has purpose, that creativity and beauty are themselves or part of that great and fiery force. And I want to believe that the universe has a purpose that is ultimately for good. So I make that choice. It's an immense universe we inhabit, full of abominable and wonderful mysteries. And mine is a creative choice, a choice for creativity. Now I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 64, "Oh, Give Us Pleasure in the Flowers Today," which is a poem by Robert Frost. And Michelle's going to play the whole thing through this as well. Creativity is to see that all bushes burn with a beauty that is almost unbearable. It is to stop arguing about the gods because it has been whispered in your ears. It is all divine.